Hello, welcome to the Missouri Teacher Development System Artisan Teacher On-Demand Learning Series. I'm Mike Rutherford and happy to be your host and facilitator for the series. What we're doing in our series of video segments is taking some of the 23 artisan themes, and especially those that are particularly well aligned to your Missouri Teacher Development System competencies, and spending some time looking at how these themes work. And our goal in the end is always to improve our craft as teachers. We know of all the things that impact student learning and student success, there's no variable that has a higher effect size than the skillfulness of me and you together as teachers. And so that's what we're working on. Today's focus is going to be a theme from the Artisan Teacher series called Enriched Environments, which aligns very well with several of your competencies. So let's get started. The definition of enriched environments from the Artisan Teacher Field Guide is the ability of the teacher to shape the physical and social environment of the classroom in order to enhance learning. So one of the things we know about the human brain and how it forms schema and how it learns and how it remembers and how it transfers to the future is that the brain pays a lot of special attention to the environment. I think evolutionary biologists would suggest that one of the things that have made human beings such a prolific species, I mean, think about it, we have spread to cover the entire Earth from subtropical to Antarctic, right? And so we've been flexible and we've been able to adapt and thrive in all these environments because our brain is wired to notice and, even more importantly, adapt to changing and different environments. A lot of the research on enriched environments and how it affects classrooms, happened in the 50s and 60s and 70s. But then there was a renaissance in this in the 90s and the 2000s as brain imaging technologies became available that really allowed neuroscientists to go back and confirm some of the early principles of enriched environments. A lot of the experiments on enriched environments were, of course, performed in rats, and sometimes that's just referred to as the rat brain research. I'll show you a summary of that. In your field guide, there's a picture, illustration, and I've duplicated it here. So basically, what we learned from the rat brain research of the 60s and 70s was that the schema in a brain, now you might think to yourself, well, gosh, these are rats. What do rats have to do with human children in a school? Well, the truth is that a rat brain and a human brain are not similar in size, but they're pretty similar, especially if you just look at the neuron by neuron organization. So what we found is that in the rat brain research, we took rats and we basically divided them into two categories. And one category were housed in what we would call an impoverished environment. So if there's such a thing as an enriched environment, right, there must also be such a thing as an impoverished environment. So an impoverished environment for rats basically included one rat per cage, all the food and water you wanted, maybe a little straw to lay down on and nest, and that's it, right? Just sustenance. And then in the enriched environment that we use the experimental group in, then here were the changes. Multiple rats per cage, so there was a social element to the rats' lives, and also their physical environment was made much more active, more room to run, chutes, ladders, tubes, tunnels, wheels. And not only were there a lot of opportunities to participate in the physical environment, these rat toys, if you will, were changed on a regular basis. So there was always a bit of novelty to the physical environment as well. So at the end of the experiments, the rats were of course sacrificed, and we looked at their brains under a powerful microscope to see if these environmental changes made any difference. And what we found is that the actual density of the dendrites of the rat brains, the dendrite bridging, that the density of this was enhanced in the enriched environment, and it was much, much less in the impoverished environment. Now, not only did we find that there was a big difference in the brain scans of rats, we also found that it was related to the environment. So when we took rats from the impoverished environment and put them in an enriched environment, after several months, they started to show dendrite growth. When we took rats from the enriched environment and put them back in the impoverished environment, after a period of time, they started to show atrophy in some of their schema. You're familiar with this concept. It's come to be known as neural plasticity. The notion that the human brain will change. It's plastic. It will adapt to whatever environment that we place it in. So even though these were humble early beginnings of this research, today we take this and we can apply it to classrooms and say, how can we enrich the physical environment of our classrooms? And how can we enrich the social environment? These were the two major categories of enrichers that had such a big impact on the dendrite density of the rat subjects in all of these early experiments. So we want an enriched physical environment, and we want an enriched social environment. And so that's what we'll look at today. What are some ways as teachers we can enrich our physical environment and we can enrich our social environment, and we can really use those to promote brain growth, which really helps with learning and assimilation and with transfer and with recall. That's the idea of enriched environments. You know, what I'd like to ask us to do is just think a little bit about what are some of the physical and social environments that you would consider enriching, right? What are some places that you go on a regular basis where you feel extra alert, where you have an extra good memory, where you feel maybe extra alive a little bit? You enjoy those places. There's a physical component to that, and there's a social component to that. Oh, just as an example, I enjoy going to this grocery store down the street from where I live called the Fresh Market. It's just a cool place to be. It's very organic, very fresh produce. It's not a large store. Great music, great spacing. The physical environment is beautiful. The way they display the produce and the fresh seafood and the beef and the deli. I mean, even if I don't need any groceries, and even if I'm not hungry, it's kind of a cool place to hang out. And when I'm in there, I don't know, I feel sort of extra, I don't know, maybe I've advanced a little bit, you know, in my, as a human being, I'm a little more evolved. It calls out the best in me. I like hanging out at the Fresh Market. Occasionally, I like to hang out in my car. I enjoy driving, especially if I haven't been where I'm driving and if the scenery is good. So a little good music on the stereo. And a couple of weeks ago, I had an opportunity to drive back from northeastern Kentucky back to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live. And so I took the route down through the Appalachian Mountains, through West Virginia, connected with the West Virginia Turnpike. If you've ever been in that area, it's a windy roads and beautiful scenery. I don't know, that sticks out to me. I felt like I was a little more alive because of the physical environment of that place. A third example I thought of is in the fall and early winter especially, I enjoy a fire. We have an outdoor fireplace, and you can put some chairs around it and build a nice fire depending on the weather outside. And you know, when 2 or 3 or 4 friends or family members are just gathered around the fire on a kind of cool fall or early winter evening, I don't know, I feel more alive there too. I think maybe there it's the physical warming of the fire, but it's also the people that are there and the conversations that I remember having in settings like that. All right, now it may not seem like it's a terribly specific assignment, but I've given you 3 examples of what, for me, are enriched environments. And each of them has a physical and a social component to it. You do the same thing. let's pause for a moment, right? I'll go away for 10 or 15 seconds. Please hit pause on your video player and consider what are some enriched environments for you. What are some of the physical and social environments? What characteristics call out the best in you? Do you feel the most alive and alert and ready to learn and ready to contribute? Think about that, and then we'll continue with some applications of this specifically back to the classroom. Okay? See you in a minute. Hey, welcome back. I hope you had fun with that. I mean, it's kind of a pleasant assignment, isn't it? Imagine places and times when you feel like the environment is really supporting you being in a great mood, or being especially open to learning or considering certain things. So let's take that now and let's apply it to some practical classroom applications. As dependable as the enriched versus impoverished environment information is in life, it's even more critical when we apply it to classroom environments. So let's first of all talk about the physical environment. I like to suggest there are two good application points for us to consider from the rat brain research on how to enhance and enrich the physical environment. One of those is to make the physical environment as active as possible. The more we can have classrooms not just be where students come to sit, but where they come to engage, where they come to be actively engaged, connecting with each other, connecting with technology, connecting with curriculum materials. So activity is an important part of an enriched physical environment. And by activity, we really just mean just the basic definition of activity. Let's burn some calories. The more on our feet, the more movement, the more changing up of our situation, where we're sitting, what we're doing. Generally, the more calories a student burns in a classroom, the more they're going to learn. So activity is the first element of an enriched physical environment. The second element is called novelty. So activity and novelty. Novelty means switch things up. Change the environment from time to time, perhaps even on a regular basis. The human brain always notices the environment, and so when the environment changes, it causes us to renegotiate our connections with the environment. Now, in a classroom, there are several things that probably should never change, right? Don't change where the pencil sharpener is. Don't change the poster that says what we do for fire drills. No need to put the sink in a different location. But everything else is fair game. And the more often we can rearrange the furniture, the more often we can rearrange the physical environment, the more stimulating we make it and the more productive it is for students. So the physical environment is important, and the two considerations there are activity and novelty. Now let's talk about the social environment. Remember, in the rat brain research, it was the multiple rats per cage adaptation that really caused this dendrite growth. So as we think about our own classroom's social environment, here are 5 kind of design look-fors to help us have not only a great physical environment, but a great social environment as well. The first is called unconditional positive regard, UPR, right? The definition of unconditional positive regard that I like and remember is just, it's the degree to which students think we like them, right? Here are the 3 parts of unconditional positive regard. Number 1 is unconditional. So whether you dress well, whether you have great hygiene, no matter where you come from, whatever your zip code is, I recognize you as being a part of the class, and my regard for you is unconditional. Even if you don't behave very well, even if you don't do your homework, for you as a human, my regard for you is unshakable. When students know that, it's a tremendous boon to their learning. The second part of unconditional positive regard is positive, right? So we regard students with positivity. We meet them at the door. We're glad they're there. They are the purpose of our profession. Unconditional, positive regard. You know, when we begin schools every fall, parents ask their children when they come back from the first day of school, whether it's virtual or whether it's face-to-face, and they all ask the same question: do you like your teacher? And I have a hypothesis. I think when a child answers that question, they're not really answering the question, do I like my teacher? They're answering this question: do I think my teacher likes me? And when the answer to that is yes, then we know that's a key part of an enriched social environment. Unconditional positive regard. The second attribute of an enriched social environment is called relaxed alertness. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, right? But it really is true. We want students to be comfortable. We want them to be relaxed. We want them to be not uptight, not overly stressed. But we also want them to be on point. We want them to be engaged. We want them to be about the business of learning. So when we kind of cut the middle there, right, just enough anxiety and stress and activity in the classroom to keep everyone on point, right? That's the alert part. But also several measures to help people feel comfortable, not too stressed out. Often I think about elite athletes when I think about the concept of relaxed alertness. Think about a 100-meter gold medalist in the Olympics. Marion Jones comes to mind, you know, one of the great athletes of our time. And if you watch a video of her running the 100-meter dash, she's so smooth. She actually doesn't really look like she's exerting herself. I mean, she's so fluid. You can just tell that her body is built to do this. But she's also covering the distance in a world record time. She's relaxed and she's alert at exactly the same time simultaneously. That's a mark of an enriched social environment, relaxed alertness. Number 3 is a concept called special treatment. Special treatment is where, as a student in your classroom, I believe from time to time that I get a perk or I get treated in a way that's due to me just because of my presence in your classroom. I must be kind of special because I get special treatment sometimes. Hey, let me ask you this. Have you ever gotten a warning ticket from a police officer? If you have, then you understand the concept of special treatment. Nothing feels better than that, right? Because you were guilty, right? And then the officer just said, you know, hey, Mr. Rutherford, gosh, try to slow it down or watch that turn signal. And if I don't get a ticket, I just get a warning. Gosh, I mean, I am devoted to that police officer for the rest of my life. I never speed through that part of town ever again. It's reciprocity. So when we feel like we get a little bit of special treatment, that's an important component of an enriched social environment. Number 4 is called positive rituals. Rituals are just things that we do on a repeated basis. How we take attendance, how we line up to go to lunch, how we switch between subjects, what we always do at 10:15, how we pass papers in, how students are recognized for doing good work. Anything that happens on a regular basis in a classroom or in a school is a ritual. And one of the ways we enhance our environment socially is if we share these rituals, and we kind of believe they're exclusive, right? Watch a professional baseball team. When someone hits a home run and they come around third base, all the other players come out of the dugout and congratulate them. And they do high fives and elbow bumps, but every team has a special ritual. And the ritual is only known by the players on the team, and when they do the ritual, they feel connected to the team. Classrooms also should have rituals. Repeated elements that say to students, you are a member of a pretty special group. The next and last of the 5 is called more collaboration, less competition. So if we can make our classrooms more collaborative and less competitive. Now a little bit of row 1 versus row 2, no harm, no foul there. A little competition spices up the day. It adds a little bit of energy. But please do remember this. the human brain is more adaptive, it is more alert, and it is more capable when it is in a cooperative, collaborative mode with others, rather than when it's trying to compete with other students for some sort of a prize or some sort of scarce resource like the teacher's attention. The most high-performing organizations in the world are not where people are competing with each other, they're where people are collaborating and cooperating with each other. Collaboration and cooperation is a much higher brain state than is possible when you feel like you're always competing to try to get a gold star or to try to beat the other people at your table. So there are 7 elements of enriched environment, 2 from the physical domain, 5 from the social domain. What I'd like to ask you to do is just take a moment and look over those 7 and say to yourself, where would be some room for some upgrading in my package? Which of the 5 social, which of the 2 physical? If you could pick 1 or 2 of those and say, based on this, here's something I could do differently, let's make some specific applications of these 7 elements of an enriched environment back to our classrooms. I'll be gone for 10 or 15 seconds. Hit pause, hit play when you've thought about it enough, and then we'll continue from there. Welcome back. Hey, I know that was a lot. 7 different principles of enriched environments. And to ask you really just cold to say, as a teacher, where are my strengths? Where could I use some of these ideas to upgrade the environment? Even though there's a lot of information here and the application of these principles of enriched environments are subtle and take quite a bit of innovation and creativity on our parts, I do want to encourage you. It's worth it. The better we become at creating enriched environments for students, the better our students will succeed in our classrooms. The impact of the classroom environment on learning is substantial. I often like to think of it like this. It's like having a second teacher in the classroom. You've got you and you've got your environment, and both are teaching full speed all the time. Now, that co-teacher that works with you, your environment, that co-teacher can either be right on your team, helping you get where you want to go, or that co-teacher, the environment, can be ambivalent, not really helping you, but not harming you. Or if we're not careful, our classroom environment can actually push students in a different direction than we would like for them to go. Often when I get a chance to come in a classroom and observe and give teachers feedback, one of the first things I do is look at the classroom environment and say to myself, is this environment, is this co-teacher helping the teacher or neutral or in some ways countering what the teacher's trying to do? It's always a good idea to have your co-teacher right on the lesson plan with you. And whether we realize it or not, our classroom environments are for sure co-teachers. The last paragraph in the Artisan Teacher Field Guide chapter on enriched environments, if you don't mind, I'd just like to close by sharing this with you. We're going to revisit that notion of collaboration and competition. So remember, the rat brain research is where this started, and we're making applications from that. The last paragraph. A final note on collaboration and competition. In the rat research, the enriched environment cages were set up to avoid competition for basic needs. All the rats had all the food, water, space, nesting material, and access to toys they needed. It was the complex social relationships that developed among rats in the absence of competition over basic needs that appeared to increase dendrite density and brain development. That comes from Marion Diamond's research, citation 1984. Just that sentence, I'd just like to share it again. It was the complex social relationships that developed among the rats in the absence of competition over basic needs that appeared to increase their dendrite density. Now let's just put students in for rats, right? When we create an environment where we're free from competing with one another over our basic needs, it's the complex social relationships that develop that increase dendrite density, which is just a proxy for schema development and for learning in the classroom. Hey, you know, perhaps we could learn a lesson from the rats with respect to enriched environments. Thanks again for being a part of Missouri Teacher Development System Artisan Teacher On-Demand Learning Series. We hope you'll continue to join us for future episodes. I'm Mike Rutherford. Bye for now.